Okay, I know I'm the first person with note cards. Please don't judge me. So I'm going to ask you to reimagine with me the way we map the world. And I'm not talking about a piece of software or hardware, but expanding our view of how we see and value the world around us. And going beyond the tangible and the physical, beyond the world of black and white absolutes, and into a world of feedback, and into a world of vivid indeterminacy, perception, and meaning. Now, I'd like to ask you all, again, to close your eyes, please. And I'd like you to imagine a map. What comes to mind when I say the word map? What do you see? Where is it located? What does it describe? How does it show it? Go ahead and open your eyes. What was on your map? Anybody want to raise a hand and tell me what was on their map? Volunteer. Come on, someone. Yes. Roads. Thank you, Seb. Perfect. It's a perfect example. So probably things like roads, political boundaries, land use, topography, these kinds of things that are quantifiable, that can be measured and labeled. These are the things that dominate the way we make maps and the maps that we consume. But I'd like us today to challenge that idea and to expand our understanding of the world as we map it. And it's okay if you don't actually make maps yourself, but you consume them. You look at them all the time. Anybody who's ever looked on Google Maps uses maps actively, okay? So before we get into the specifics, I want you all to know, and this is probably something a lot of you knew already, that every map in the world is biased. Every map that's ever been produced, it has distortion, it has bias, it has intention, and now it's gone. Yeah, there we go, thank you. So I'm going to use as an example this map of the world in what's known as the Mercator Projection. And I don't know about in Nepal, in the United States, we use this projection a lot, or at least we used to. And I want you to just take a quick look at this map and look at how spaces are distributed, how things are sized. It's a very simple map. It only shows land and water and some lines of latitude and longitude. But I want you to look particularly at Greenland and at Africa. And here they look to be roughly the same size. But if I were to tell you that Greenland is actually 1/15 the size of Africa, I think this would show you that this map has an incredible amount of bias. Now, if we look at it again, what we notice is that from the very simple act of taking a sphere and cutting it open and spreading it on a flat plane, equatorial continents like South America, Africa, Australia become much smaller in comparison to the northern and southern hemispheres. Like, look how gigantic Russia is. Obviously, it's very huge already. But it's so exaggerated here. And if you're looking at this map, you would think that the countries, particularly in the global north, have a much more significant presence geographically than they actually do. So we're going to jump to a place that's close to here, and I want to ask if anybody knows what river this is. Bagmati, right. It's the Bagmati River in somewhere around 1928. And I think just by looking at this picture, we can understand how much value this place has, how much respect it has, how important it is to the function and the daily presence of culture. And here's a map that was made of the Kathmandu Valley roughly at the same time, the late 1920s. And just a quick note, this is made at the height of British territorial expansion by an Englishman. And this map takes the cultural presence of place and reduces it to a line. So here, the Bagmati looks the exact same as every other river in the valley, despite its incredible depth of significance. And along its course, the Pashupatinath reduced to a dot, an icon. And I think that this map represents a very profound devaluation of place from someone who had no familiarity with this place whatsoever. And I think that the results in many ways of that devaluation have been dramatic. Now, this is a map of Pashupatinath, just straight from Google Maps. Another map loaded with bias, as they all are. This is all about transportation infrastructure. It's about you trying to get from one place to another. Destinations, land uses, geographic features. But I want you to think, if you walked out of this building right now and went down to Pashupatinath and you talked with a sadhu, a priest, or maybe a family taking a loved one to be purified in the waters of the river before cremation, Do you think that they would map this place in the same way? I don't think so. So I think we need to look beyond the physical, beyond the quantifiable. And I think we need to find a world full of individual and collective perception of things like sacred realms full of gods and goddesses, myths and legends, and scale, structure, and complexity beyond human understanding. And in order to do that, I'm going to take you on a journey. We're going to go west of here to Upper Mustang, about 10 miles, well, ultimately 30 to 10 miles, let's say 20 kilometers from the Tibetan border. Now, Upper Mustang is a place that is in many ways ancient, but is also a place of profound contradictions. On the left here, you can see in the village of Kagbeni, a protector deity guarding the village. This is built every year, painted anew, phallus included. And on the right, the river in the same village being aggressively channelized with reinforced concrete. I think this presents us with a stark contrast between two sets of values of place. One that is espoused by local people who understand it, who live there, who practice their daily lives there. The other by some people coming in from the outside and imposing their own values. And so here we enter Upper Mustang. And I'm going to give you a quick quote from the French explorer Michel Picel, who first came to Mustang in the 1960s and described it as a place painted yellow and ochre, a succession of countless barren, wind-eroded crags overlooking deep gorges and canyons, cutting across an inferno of parched soil. And if you just read this quote, you would think, okay, this place is a complete and total desert. But as Picel went on, he discovered the absolute and incredible depth of complexity of cultural presence here, and also the profound presence of sacred realms. Now, Upper Mustang, like almost anywhere in the world, has been mapped many times, and by many people, each of these people with their own set of intentions, their own set of biases and distortions. This particular map shows, I think it's from 1875, done by a set of Western explorers, which show Upper Mustang as a passage between Tibet and Nepal, when it held for many centuries a status as a primary trade route for salt and grain between these two places, a status now denied by a closed border. Here we see a trekking map of Upper Mustang. It's sacred places, villages, forgotten caves that hold untold treasures, reduced to a series of points on a line. And I think this is the valuation of landscape and culture and place as a commodity, as something that's meant to be consumed. This is my estimation of the Nepali government's most recent mapping effort in Upper Mustang, which has led to the determination that it will once again become an important trade route between China, aka Tibet, and Nepal, in the process completely erasing, bypassing, ignoring the cultural context of place through the construction of a paved road. This is my map of Upper Mustang. And in a few minutes, I'm going to take you on a journey through this place, through this map, rather than describing the entire thing to you, because this whole map is about perception and meaning. It lies at the intersection of physical geography and sacred geography. And it's also constructed through what I would call perceptual geography. And what I mean by that is that rather than being placed in actual space and kind of wiggling around through mountain passes and gorges and walking up the sides of cliffs, it's constructed as a straight line. And the kind of theoretical foundation of this is that the understanding that every person is always at the center of their own universe. And this is not an exercise in ego or self-importance, but rather it's an experiment in understanding how we can map something through the lens of individual perception and individual understanding. And rather than from the view of a satellite high up in the sky, completely disconnected from this context of place. So just a quick explanation. Here we can see 8 primary circles, each representing a village and the sacred realm that village, and sometimes in between each village, a series of orbs which meet together in an explosion of red, each of those representing a mountain pass, the confluence of the realms of heaven and earth. Now, this is the point at which our feet touch the ground. We're in Upper Mustang, well, we're almost in Upper Mustang, And here you can see in the foreground Jomsom, on the left, the Kali Gandaki River, and just beyond the Kali Gandaki River Valley disappearing into the distance, where we can find the gateway to Upper Mustang, to our destination. As we walk up the valley, before we go to the first village, we come to Muktinath after a climb of almost a kilometer. And even though Muktinath is just a single place, it's actually part of a much larger and more extensive sacred field, which includes all kinds of spiritual relevance, places of pilgrimage that are of less significance than Muktinath, including the sacred lakes at Damodar Kund, high above in the Damodar Himal at 5,500 meters. As we come down the valley, we come to Kagbeni, a village of green and oasis in the desert, and in the middle, it's Red Gumba. On the left, it's ruined castle. And this is our map of Kagbeni. So this circular enclosure represents the locally available pigments with which chortens and mane walls are painted. In the center, the dense nucleated core of the village, punctuated by the red gumba and the white abandoned fort, surrounded by green fields, dotted with grids of apple trees, a new cash crop, which is kind of changing the spatial and economic dynamic of this place. And on the right, in the orbit of the central planet of the village, Muktinath, exuding its sacred field. We leave the valley, climb up the side of a cliff on the ancient salt route infrastructure, held above the gorge precipitously. And we come to the village of Samar. And if we were to look at the set of three stone cairns that greets us to the village, we would probably describe it as something made of stone that's red, white, and black, or at least the left one used to be black. And that's beautifully non-uniform in texture and color. But what we can't see is that this is a manifestation of a vast and complex sacred geography, a point of transit between the realms of deities. And here we see these three colors which represent the Rigsum Gompo, the three protectors of Tibetan Buddhism. But to us, we see it as a set of stone figures in red, white, and black. But really, this is a symbol of cosmic depth and complexity, of realms beyond our own. We continue from Samar to the mountain pass, crowned with a cairn of pale stones and prayer flags. And before we can move forward, a sprig of juniper must be burnt, its smoke rising up through fluttering prayer flags. And we come finally past multiple villages, snaking down river valleys, their fields of pink buckwheat swaying in the wind, to the entrance chorten of Charang here, the green village in the distance. And beyond, finally, we reach the top of the pass leading to Lomantang, the city of Mustang, again crowned by prayer flags. And as we come down to the city, we pass by its adobe wall, past more chortens and mane walls, all painted white and red in the colors of the city, into the center of the city, past more chortens, paint dripping down houses, only on the corner where there are prayer flags above, an indication of the sacred. And from the roof of one of the gumbas, we can see the fields of the city stretching beyond, meeting the stark soil just outside. Now, this is the map of Lomantang. So at the bottom, the pass at the confluence of the realms of earth and sky, and the sacred enclosure painted in red and white, and at the center, the core of the city itself, being orbited by multiple smaller villages. In the very center, the palace of the Raja, the gumbas next to it, and a series of chortens surrounded by green fields and water. So now that we've taken this journey together through Upper Mustang, I want you to imagine what your map of this place is like. Does it look like this? Does it try to quantify and only document the physical? Or does it expand beyond to find more presence of place? So I think it's important for us here to value place beyond the physical, beyond the quantifiable. And there are so many more examples beyond the idea of the sacred geography that we can look to. And I think if we understand the world as a cultural creation, as a manifestation of the relationship between people and the land in which they live, not just trees and soil and water, then I think landscape and place again have agency and power. And I think that we all have a profound duty to challenge the way that our societies see and value landscape and the way they map it, and ultimately the way they shape it. And I think that it's obvious for us that places like Kathmandu, places like Upper Mustang, Nepal, the rest of the world are all going to be shaped by us. Thank you.